To introduce tonight's video, I'm going to take you back to the 1990s in the words of the immortal Bill Hicks, a wonderful comedian who died way before his time. This is what he had to say about life. The world's like a ride in an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are. Oh, the ride goes up and down, around and around, and it has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly coloured, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Then you start to wonder, hey, is this real, or is this just a ride? And that's a good analogy for tonight's creepy tales, set in the mysterious world of the ball pit. Such wonderful places during the day, but at night, they take a sinister turn. So, without further ado, let's go with I Found a Ball Pit in an Abandoned Factory by Johnny Blaze Creepy. I'd never be able to sleep on the last Friday of every month. Anticipation-induced knots twisted in my stomach, only to be amplified as my sister and I started mapping out our journey through the Wonderbarn play place. Between episodes of TV and any games we could get our hands on, we'd grab a piece of paper and draw our path. Okay, Howard, we start here. My sister pointed at the crudely drawn rectangle which was supposed to represent the animatronics show. Our trip would always begin there, 9 a.m. sharp, so we could sing along with the wireframe barn animals as they danced back and forth along the rails on the stage. After that, her pencil traced upwards on the page to a bunch of smaller rectangles. We moved to the games. The more time we have to collect tickets, the better our chances of getting the plane. My 7-year-old eyes widened. Kids would spend their entire weekend trying to get the 750 tickets required to buy a flimsy foam plane and the plastic slingshot used to launch it. We were no different. Finally, and if we have time, my eyes widened in excitement. We'll end the day in the playground. Oh man, I love the playground, I yelled excitedly. The playground was the highlight of the whole trip. After taking a break to eat pizza, we'd sprint our little legs into the brightly coloured jungle gym. It was sprawling and had many crisscrossing tubular slides, a climbing wall, and, most importantly, a massive ball pit. Hundreds of thousands of small plastic balls, bright reds, blues, greens and yellows flying every which way in the soft foam chamber. Little mesh nets extending from all sides to make sure no balls got out. Hey, Howard, you good? Phil leaned forward and tapped me on the shoulder, jolting me out of my stupor. I noticed a stinging sensation on my hand. The liquor had fallen into my raw cuticles. Hey, your hands are shaking again. Here, let me top your glass off. Phil grabbed the bottle of Jameson and refilled the missing liquid. I nodded in thanks and gulped the entire glass down. I pulled out an orange bottle and dropped a rectangular pill into my mouth. Want one? I offered, handing the bottle to Phil. He raised his palm. Oh, no thanks, man. I'll stick to the booze. I tilted my eyes to face Phil. This was the first time I really looked at him since he'd entered my house. 3 deep wrinkles lined his forehead. The bags around his eyes had deepened tremendously since that day. His head was almost entirely bald, except for a few thin brown strands. His pristine white t-shirt could barely hold his bulging gut. You look like shit, I stated plainly. He chuckled. It's good to see you two, Howard. How's the family? You mean how's Alina? I corrected. Oh, she's fine. Still nice enough to let me stay here. I motioned at the small basement room. Still rent-free? He asked, raising his eyebrows. Nah, fuck off, man. I mow the lawn. I cook sometimes. I earn my keep okay. I realized I'd probably come off too angry and softened my tone. Look, I plan on helping out financially soon. I'm not there yet. He paused for a moment, seemed to search for the best words. Oh, how? When do you think you'll be there? It's been so many years, man. Yeah, I'm trying to figure some stuff out. Cut down on drinking. Today's different since you're here. He raised his eyebrows. And, the pills? My grip tightened reflexively on the prescription bottle. No, I'm not going to stop those. Not yet. Reluctant to continue the line of questioning, I asked my own. So how have you been, Phil? What have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, I've been doing okay.
He began to pull out a pack of cigarettes, but stopped himself.
Hey, is it cool if I smoke in here?
Not really. Oh, here, just use this. I handed him a small, lime green e-cigarette. The vapor crackled in the device as he took a long draw.
I've been studying a lot, actually. Trying to learn as much as I can.
I surveyed his face for a few seconds, looking for a hint as to what he was going on about. He had a determined expression on his face, and my heart fluttered and a knot built up in my stomach. So, studying what? I finally asked. A deep chill ran along my spine and radiated outwards. Well, he continued, confirming my worst fear.
Unsolved mysteries and urban legends, anthropology, local history, even some physics and astronomy. Literally anything that could give us a little bit more information.
Oh, shut up. I cut him off. Skipping the glass entirely, I grabbed the Jameson with a trembling hand and took a deep swig.
Is that what you came here for? Oh, Howard, just let me explain.
Answer the goddamn question. I cut him off sharply.
Well, yeah, he admitted, averting my gaze as he spoke.
Listen, Phil, I already told you. I don't freaking care. I never want to think about that night ever again. I began to choke up. The substances failed to numb a torrent of memories that came rushing into my brain. Hey, you there, buddy? Phil hit my shoulder playfully, causing me to jump on the top row of the metal bleachers. Several people turned to see what the cause of the sound was. Hey, stop daydreaming. Amy's about to start. Oh, shit. My bad. I chuckled. I looked down to see 6 runners lined in a staggered line on the red clay track. Amy stood at the inner circle of the track. Oh, she looked as gorgeous as always, especially in her track uniform.
Hey, you, think she's finally gonna let you smash?
Phil whispered in my ear with a playful grin. Oh, shut up, dumbass, I laughed and elbowed him in the ribs. We were interrupted by the starter gun firing, and then the girls took off. Amy had a fierce expression on her face as she overtook the second fastest girl, half a second before crossing the finish line. The crowd erupted in cheers as we all went over to congratulate her. The 4 of us, Phil, Amy, myself, and another friend, Alex, hauled into a nearby Dairy Queen to celebrate Amy's win, as well as the end of our final semester of high school. I'll always remember that as the best day of my life. The weather was perfect. None of us had a single care in the world. It was that perfect blend of the careless freedom of youth and an optimistic zeal. Our whole lives were ahead of us, and we were extremely excited for our future after the summer.
Hey, you guys ready to check out this new building I found?
Phil said in a quiet tone as he looked around at the busy seats. No eavesdroppers were to be seen. He opened his backpack and took out a thick, folded booklet of maps. Urban exploration was a hobby the 3 of us had recently taken up. Growing up in suburbia, there wasn't a whole lot to do. We loved the sense of danger and adventure that came with it. And this time the building in question was a large factory.
What was the factory for?
Alex wondered out loud.
Well,
not sure, man. Maybe widgets or some shit. Anyways, here's what I know. Should be about 2 stories, and based on some forums I checked out. Well, we looked at Phil then in anticipation.
There may be a hidden basement room.
Oh, I don't know. It sounds like bullshit, but someone said they found it in the floor plan.
And how do you propose we get in this building?
Amy interjected.
I have a couple of ideas,
Phil continued.
I drive back past the building on the way back from work.
I walked around it quick last week and I saw a couple of potential entry points. Well, any of them involve breaking something? I added, hoping not to add any crimes to the illegal trespassing.
Well, just one.
But hopefully we won't have to do it, Phil chuckled. He detailed several potential entry points. A door with a dated lock on it, a trash chute that could be entered through, a few windows that seemed to have big enough gaps to slip through. "I guess we'll just have to show up and pick the best option we find," Alex concluded. We had to plan our excursion around several events. Only Saturday night wouldn't work, since Amy had church the following morning. Other days conflicted with when Phil could take his dad's car. There was track practice, work schedules, and so on. We finally decided to go on a Thursday. The first Thursday after school ended. The four of us were giddy with excitement as we cruised down the highway towards the old factory. Each of us were donned in black, and we all kept running shoes in case we needed to make a break for it. Our bags were loaded with gear, a first aid kit, flashlights, candy, and a few tools. We cut the car's lights and parked it at a nearby lot, 1 or 2 blocks away. We walked around the building in the still summer air, searching for a way in. It was Amy who noticed the cracks in the windows that were just big enough for her to sneak through but wouldn't grant the same luxury to the rest of us. Not wanting to risk getting sliced by glass, we kept moving. "Hey, what about this?" I whispered as I walked to the front door and gave the knob a jiggle. It didn't budge. As we neared the garbage disposal chute, we noticed a small gap separating the chute from the ground. It was about 18 inches wide, just enough for us to slide into. "Looks like it's just a piece of wood covering the space in that hole," Amy suggested. I shimmied on the ground until I was face to face with the piece of plywood. Giving it a small push, I noticed some give. "Guys, check this out." I pushed harder until whatever was blocking the wood slid out of the way, allowing me to push the whole piece off. I crawled up and jumped down into the building. I shivered in the pitch darkness and clicked on my flashlight. "Hey guys, hurry up. It's creepy in here," I whispered. The 3 of them eventually climbed in through the chute, and their lights joined mine as well, illuminating the factory. We quietly explored the building, taking care not to make any unwanted sounds on the scattered glass that covered the floor. It was a large building, maybe the size of a small shopping mall. Graffiti covered almost every exposed surface. "God, how did they even paint this place?" I asked as I shone my light directly up to reveal a large mural of what looked to be a sea monster attacking several boats that surrounded it. Well, Amy laughed. "Graffiti artists are some crafty bastards." After scouring the building for around 30 minutes, we finally ended up in one of the bathrooms. Phil was the first one to notice that one of the large square tiles in the bathroom made a much lighter clack sound when he stepped over it. "Hey, you guys think this is the hidden basement?" he whispered excitedly. Though slightly reluctant to break the building anymore, I figured no one would care at this point. "Well, there's only one way to find out," I shrugged. Phil and I used a crowbar and small screwdriver to make several large cracks in the ceramic tile while Amy and Alex stayed outside, making sure to watch for any signs of police or other trespassers. Every thud echoed in the large building, causing us to cringe with each strike. We finally broke off a big enough piece to reveal it. Phil gasped. "Holy shit, it's a trapdoor. Hey, Amy, Alex, get over here." We all stared down into the square hole and the ladder that stretched into it. The first thing I noticed as I descended the ladder was the smell. A strange mix of sulfur, some type of metal, and a touch of sweetness flooded my nostrils. "Hey, anyone else smell this shit?" I asked as I covered my face with my hand. It wasn't a bad smell. In fact, it was almost pleasant. It reminded me of the smell that came from my garage when Dad was working on a welding project. However, the strength of it was overpowering and was beginning to give me a headache. The 3 of them coughed and nodded in agreement. A feeling of gnawing discomfort slowly began to grip me. "This area's giving me bad vibes," Alex whispered. "Let's just check it out quick and get out of here." We walked down the much smaller space into the basement. Shining our flashlights around to see there wasn't a spot of graffiti, it looked like no one else had a chance to check this place out. The basement section was a lot smaller than upstairs, maybe half or a quarter of the size of the main room in the factory. We had no idea what the purpose of the plain concrete room was for. Our beams of light washed over the empty room to reveal, well, not much of anything. After about 2 minutes of walking, my flashlight hit something.
"Guys, what the fuck is that?"
Phil asked slowly as his eyes focused on what was in front of us. And what we saw was a ball pit. And not just any ball pit, the exact one from my childhood. This is from the Wonder Barn, right? I stuttered, the sinking feeling hitting my stomach twice as hard as before. My friends gasped in astonishment as we stared at the brightly colored plastic balls, foam enclosure, and the net holding everything in. "Yeah, it definitely is. Has the same shape, same color. Jesus, what's it doing here?" Alex asked as everyone but the two of us took a few more steps towards the pit. "This is giving me a really bad feeling. I think we should..." I started before Amy cut me off. "Oh, come on now. Let's just check it out real quick." Phil nodded and started to follow Amy, leaving Alex and I nervously tailing the group. "I swear to God, this has to be identical to the one from the Wonder Barn," I repeated, unease building in my stomach. "Oh, that's too creepy. I don't think I want to know why it's here." The uncanny state of the ball pit continued to weigh on me. It was as if someone ripped my exact memory of the ball pit from my childhood and placed it here. The same nets, same colored balls, even the same foam padding. "Dude, it's fine. I'm sure there's 100 ball pits just like that one," Phil muttered in my direction in a futile attempt to quell my anxiety. "Let's just take a quick look, and then we'll be on our way." The strange smell only grew stronger as we made our way towards the pit. I scanned the rest of the room for any signs of a play area or other clues as to where this thing may have come from. I couldn't find any. The sheer absurdity of the sight sent shivers down my spine. The dingy basement in the abandoned factory, the pristine ball pit just sitting there in the dark. It was as if it was calling towards us, daring us to find a rational explanation for its existence. We finally reached the pit. I could see a Velcro patch that connected a small gap in the net. It was designed for a small child, again exactly the same size and shape as my memory of the ball pit from my childhood. Well, before I could stop her, Amy had climbed up the top of the pit and begun to undo the Velcro. "Oh, Amy, stop!" I yelled in a panic. My hands were beginning to shake as a primal anxiety welled up inside me. Alex agreed as well. "Yeah, he does have a point, Amy. Anything could be in there, like razors or rusty nails or something." Even Phil began to grow uneasy. "Amy, chill. We can use a stick or something to poke around in it first." Well, Amy just shrugged and chuckled. "Guys, it's fine. I'll just stick my feet in for a second." And with that, she opened the mesh net and kicked her legs into the pool of brightly colored plastic balls. Immediately, she began convulsing. Her whole body started to shake violently and her eyes rapidly shifted involuntarily. Her whole body fell into the ball pit, sending several plastic balls flying upwards. The three of us flew into action. "What the fuck?" I screamed as I reached the net and tore it open. Alex and Phil were right behind me. We managed to pull Amy out of the ball pit by her arms and laid her down on the cold concrete. Her eyes had begun to roll back in her head and red foam started to pool in her mouth. We had no idea what was going on and were in hysterics for several seconds. Just as fast as the seizure had started, Amy stopped convulsing and began to lift her torso up while wiping the foam from her mouth. "Amy, what the fuck happened? Are you okay?" I stammered while holding her. Her eyes looked right through me. They were glassy and showed no sign of recognition. She began to speak in a quiet monotone. "Local. Group." I gave her a small shake. "Hey, Amy, are you okay? Come on, snap out of it." She retreated at my touch and scooted a few feet away from me.
Amy, what the hell happened to you?
Alex and Phil asked frantically, almost in unison. Well, she just ignored us all.
Virgo,
she said between deep breaths, as if she was trying to calm herself down.
What the hell does that mean?
I stammered. She ignored me again and whispered something in a voice so quiet I could hardly manage to hear it.
Laniakea.
She then bolted upright.
Amy,
we called to her, but it was too late. She screamed into the air.
There's no beginning. There's no end.
As she turned and started sprinting away.
Amy,
we screamed again, following her with our flashlights and trying to catch up with her. It was too late. She'd reached full speed, lowering her head. We screamed again as we heard the ear-splitting crunch of her head connecting with the thick concrete wall. We all ran as fast as we could to catch up with her. She lay there, still except for an occasional convulsion. Her head was tilted in a horribly unnatural angle as a deep red pool of blood started forming underneath her. Any semblance of an adventure had disappeared. The three of us bolted out of the building in a panic, moving as fast as we could while holding Amy's limp body. We stumbled out of the front door, which was unlocked from the inside, and I dialed 911 as fast as I could. The officer kindly noted my entire statement. The urban exploration, the hidden basement, and the ball pit. His eyes seemed kind, almost as if he believed my ridiculous story. When he'd finished writing his notes, he lifted his eyes to meet mine with a solemn expression.
Son,
he started slowly,
from now on, I want you to be careful where you explore.
He looked up at the ceiling, lost in thought for several seconds before returning to me.
Some stones are better left unturned.
Phil remained silent for a long time, as if searching for what to say next. His next words shook me to my core.
Don't you want some kind of closure?
I stammered, searching my spinning brain for a reply. None came to mind. Sensing my weakness, he spoke again.
There are other places like the ball pit,
he started in a soft voice.
If we can find them all, maybe we could do something. Maybe we could help people. Whatever Amy saw in that ball pit, we could make sure no one has to face something like that ever again. We could make something good come out of this. Listen, we need to go back there.
My heart sank.
I've done some research on similar phenomena. I think I know where the ball pit came from. We can learn more about it, and we could learn what happened to Amy.
I repeated the same thought that had circled my head every single day since that night. The same thought that the officer had repeated so many years ago. What if what we're looking for isn't worth finding?
Don't you want to find that out for yourself?
Fuck. I kicked my small desk table over, scattering an assortment of ashtrays and boxes of old food all over the floor. He was right. I needed to find some closure. What if I could learn what had happened to Amy? Maybe I could finally lay my trauma to rest and move past the events of that abandoned building. But I was so scared. The pain of that night ached in my bones. How could I bring myself to confront that nightmare again? Right. How do you want me to help? I muttered in a defeated tone as I sat back down.
I can come back tomorrow after you've sobered up. Here, Howard.
He handed me a piece of paper with his phone number.
Give me a call when you're ready. And, thanks. I can't do this without you, man.
He gave me a small pat on the shoulder and then stood up to make his exit from the basement. I sat in that seat for hours after that, weighing my options. I could continue my days in misery, drowning out every emotion with drugs and alcohol, or I could join Phil. I could try and find the truth. A truth so horrific that Amy couldn't stand to bear it for another second. I woke up the next afternoon, an ear-splitting migraine reminding me of the previous night. I immediately fell into a panic. No substances to level out the fear and sadness that flooded back into me as I remembered my conversation with Phil. I prayed our entire conversation was just some hallucination conjured out of my drug-addled mind. But all those hopes vanished as my bleary eyes scanned over the folded square of paper that Phil had left. Amy's last words began ringing in my head as I picked up that paper. "There is no beginning. There is no end." I picked up my phone and dialed Phil. He seemed relieved as he heard my voice on the other end. After a short conversation, I came to learn a little more about his research into the ball pit and similar phenomena. I have my own ball pit. My eyes widened in shock at Phil's words. He continued, "I think everyone does. It's hard to know exactly what this thing is, but whatever it is, it's otherworldly. My current hypothesis is that these things they're portals to other dimensions." I laughed at his words. That concept seemed unbelievable. "Phil, you can't expect me to believe that, right?" I chuckled. "Right?" "How do you think a ball pit from your childhood memory appeared in the middle of a freaking abandoned building?" Well, I had no answer for that, so I let him continue. "My working theory is that whenever one of these portals appears, it causes a micro rift in space-time. Maybe it somehow pulled your childhood memory out of your head." I held the phone in silence for a long time. Phil continued. "I had a very similar thing happen to me. For me, it was my study hall classroom from middle school." "Where was that?" I asked. "It was deep in a forest many years ago. They seemed to pop up in secluded areas, random places forgotten by society." "So, why are you coming to me with all of this? Why didn't you reach out to Alex?" "Well, I haven't been able to find him anywhere," he admitted. "It's like he fell off the face of the earth. As for you," he continued, "well, I just couldn't go back there by myself." "Are you asking me to go back to that frickin' place?" I yelled, distant memories returning to the surface. I heard him let out a deep sigh through the phone. "Could you do it for Amy?" We met up around dusk the following day. While the sense of loss was palpable, I could feel Amy's presence was missing. I forced myself to stay calm and focus on the goal, return to the ball pit and find any leads on what might have caused Amy's breakdown. I jumped in Phil's car and we began to drive. The same drive from all those years ago. The car was silent, allowing us to both stew in our own despair. Phil tried to lighten the mood several times with his trademark humor, but his jokes just felt lifeless. I knew he sensed my mood and acquiesced to driving the rest of the way in silence. It was nighttime by the time we ended up at the building. It'd be hard to describe it as a building, though. Broken windows and graffiti had been replaced by steel and concrete rubble. Phil saw my face as I looked at the demolished pile in front of me. "Yeah, this place was condemned by the city a long time ago. I think we should still be able to find some clues. Maybe the entrance to the basement is still accessible." I nodded, wordlessly mourning the loss of innocence this place represented. We trudged through various piles of rock, careful to avoid any exposed shards hidden in the rubble. The faint smell we'd previously experienced only grew stronger as we got closer to what used to be the building's bathroom. The sulfuric, metallic odor instantly transported me back to our first encounter with the ball pit. I whispered at Phil to stop and doubled over. I took several deep breaths and forced myself to calm down. A few minutes later, we'd made it to the area where the trapdoor had been. Based on the way the building had collapsed, not much rubble covered the door. After heaving several heavy wooden beams and a few bricks and other scattered pieces of rubble, we finally were able to grab the handle and force the door open. I knew something was wrong the second I made it down into the basement. The concrete room seemed almost the same as it previously had. The only difference wasn't dark this time. The walls were lined with several lanterns that glowed a deep orange all the way down. Phil looked just as shocked as me as he climbed down the ladder. "Phil, let's get moving," I said quickly. The odor of the room was just as strong as ever, filling my body with a panicked gusto. I began to move back up the ladder, closely behind Phil, who had already started climbing back up. But before we could, I saw several silhouettes illuminated by the glow. One of them let out an unearthly shriek and began sprinting towards me. "Phil, hurry up!" I screamed as I moved as fast as I could towards the ladder. I heard the soft thudding footsteps rapidly increasing in volume behind me. I began to climb the ladder, 2 or 3 rungs at a time. Phil was ahead of me and almost out of the hole. I picked up my pace and started climbing even faster. Whatever was down there was almost close enough to touch me now. "Hey, Hal, grab my hand." Phil had turned around and reached his hand down for me. Just as my hand closed on his wrist, I felt an icy hand wrap around my ankle. I looked down and tried to kick at my assailant, but his grip wouldn't loosen. I got a brief glimpse of his face. It was Alex. He'd aged noticeably more than Phil and I. His skin was pale white and his hair was nearly silver. In addition to his accelerated aging, I noticed something else. A new look in his piercing blue eyes. They looked right through me with a demented intensity. 2 more people from the basement shuffled up the ladder, and before Phil or I could gain any leverage, several other hands grabbed at my ankles, sending me tumbling back down into the hole. "Alex, what the fuck are you doing here?" I screamed as I was carried deeper into the basement. I looked at the 4 people holding me. 2 men and 2 women, all dressed in white pants and a white shirt. He didn't respond to me. I tried to kick and scream, anything to resist my capture, but it was useless. I was outnumbered and my attempts to escape were useless. My cries to Phil were met with deaf ears as well. Another man, tall and also clad in white, walked past us, presumably to close the trapdoor or capture Phil as well. My fear grew as we neared the ball pit. 2 other people opened the mesh net, awaiting my arrival. The acrid stench of the room was nauseating. Fear flooded every inch of my body as I remembered Amy's brief dip into the pit. Before long, I was face to face with the multicolored plastic balls, ripped directly out of a childhood memory and relocated into our world. "Behold!" Alex shouted, before his 4 followers threw me deep into the pit. I felt a sense of weightlessness as my body displaced hundreds of shiny plastic balls. I can't explain what happened after that. My comprehension of the events and the words I could use to describe couldn't even begin to do it justice. The overwhelming sensation of awareness was unbearable. More information than my brain was able to process poured into my head at light speed. I learned about the planet we call Earth, its solar system, surrounding galaxies, supergiant stars, black holes the size of 1,000,000 suns, an unfathomable scope. An abyss that stretches deeper than consciousness, an abyss that humanity lazily floats on the surface of, blissfully unaware of what's beneath, ready to swallow everything we've ever known in one gulp. I prayed for ignorance to fill me again as I looked out into the alien horizon, shining a color that doesn't exist. There was no end to it. It just stretched and stretched and stretched. I wanted to gouge my eyes out just to stop seeing it. The most horrifying thing of all, this was just a minute glimpse of this boundless void. The next thing I remember was slowly waking up. In my depleted state, I couldn't do much except look at my surroundings with apathy. Small, colored plastic balls were scattered across the basement floor. Thousands of them, enough to fill up the entire room with their rainbow. I saw a few of my kidnappers, their heads barely visible over the surface of plastic balls. I stepped forward, scattering hundreds of the balls with each step. I noticed their eyes were missing. There was no blood, no sign of any injury, just hollow craters. And that sight seemed to shake me out of my daze. I wasted no time breaking into a sprint as fast as I could out of that basement, tearing through the ocean of plastic with my eyes tunneled exactly in front of me. I never even looked back to see what happened to the ball pit or whoever those acolytes were, or even what happened to Alex. Nothing mattered except escape. I have no doubt in my mind that Alex will never come looking for me. Even if he survived whatever it was that happened in the basement, he'd have no motive to pursue me. I saw what it was they wanted me to see. And as for Phil, I haven't heard from him since that night. I assumed he ran as far as he could and never looked back, but I don't blame him at all. I know I would have done the same if we'd switched places. And I don't need to see Phil ever again to know we have an unspoken understanding. The second we opened the trapdoor in that cursed building for a second time, well, I was right. Our world is a massive place, filled with unexplored frontiers, realms that stretch further and deeper than we can ever imagine. If you ever chance upon something impossible, please heed my advice. There's nothing to be gained from more knowledge and everything to lose. Do not go down the rabbit hole. It has no end. Be careful what it is that you choose to worship, as higher powers exist. I have no doubt about that anymore. The entity that you may view as a god, however, sees you as nothing. A small fly to swat after it gets too close. And if you choose to run, I don't blame you one bit. That's what Amy did. Sometimes I wish I'd chosen the same path myself. And that leaves one option. When the unfathomable begins to creep towards you, lock your doors, shutter the windows, crawl under your bedsheets, and hide for the rest of your miserable existence. That's what I plan to do. And I only know of one way to do it.
Our second tale of ball pit terror this evening is The Ball Pit by Icy Dice 1, 2, 3.
Young Max stood at the entrance of the playroom. Before him was an entire area full of loud and belligerent children, running and screaming in every direction. Some of them went up and down a plastic slide connected to a larger jungle gym. Giggles of joy came from all over the room, but they occurred most of all in the ball pit. The ball pit was a rather large tub full of multicolored plastic orbs, cluttered with small children splashing around. Max didn't particularly like other children, but his mother told him to make some friends. Max slowly descended into the pit, with a frown on his pale little face. Almost immediately after entering, a small boy tossed himself onto Max and sent him tumbling into the center of the arena. Max resurfaced with a scowl painted on his lips. It wasn't long after the initial accident that more kids fell back into Max. He placed his arms over his face, but to no avail. He felt the children fall onto him, shoving him further and further down. Max was frantically squirming at this point. He attempted to scream, but all that exited his lips was a soft groan as the ball pit and children sandwiched him together. He felt his face strain as his muscles tightened due to the lack of oxygen he was getting. Max was shoving and clawing at the pile above him now. The weight of the kids combined began to take its toll as an insurmountable pressure was forced onto Max. His body began to stop fighting the pressure as Max's arms and legs went limp. Their weight and the sheer number of rubber balls in the pit was preventing him from breathing, and he felt some kid's knee and elbow him in the face. He could feel himself losing consciousness. He could feel himself drowning. His eyes fluttered before he completely blacked out. A strange sensation shot through Max's body as he woke up. His head was pounding, and a high-pitched ringing sound filled his ears. He soon after rubbed his head and regained his composure, happy to be able to breathe again. He allowed his fingers to run across the surface below him. He seemed to be on a moving platform of sorts. Max sat up in a daze and looked around, confused by what he saw. He wasn't sure how long he'd been unconscious. He yawned and stretched his arms out before grabbing the rail next to him. He was on an escalator, slowly moving downward. The surrounding area was different than anything Max had ever seen before. The sky was aligned with purple clouds and a pink hue. The sky was brightly lit, but there appeared to be no sun. Yet there were stars, but with no moon. Max looked downward where the escalators were heading. He seemed to pass through a thin layer of clouds, and below those he saw a platform. He saw colourful carnivals on it, and beautiful birds and butterflies fluttered through the air quite majestically. Before he knew it, Max's feet touched down onto the ground, and he stood before a gigantic place. Everywhere he looked, his eyes were met with an abundance of beauty. Lush gardens full of pure white flowers and trees made of cotton candy substance filled his vision. Max pranced along the perimeter of the platform, taking in all the sights. Then he stepped onto a path made from the whitest marble he'd ever seen. It wasn't long after he started skipping down the path that he came into contact with the owner of the mysterious and wonderful land. He was a rather tall man, and his skin was pale and smooth. He opened his mouth to reveal a toothy grin made up of teeth treated with the most proper of hygienic care, and the sight of the man caused Max to smile as well. He wore a red suit, decorated with blue, purple, and yellow polka dots. It was tacky, but Max looked past that and stared in awe at the man. Happiness and joy seemed to radiate off him and spread in every direction. "Hello, child. Would you like a balloon?" Max smiled and nodded his head politely. His mum would always give him balloons on his birthday, and it brought back fond memories. The man smiled and held out his hand. Max took it, and together they galloped along the path and towards the center of the carnival. A small carousel seemed to be standing directly in the center, and so the two of them got on. Little Max had trouble at first, but the man helped lift him up onto the porcelain horse. But something was bothering Max, and although he didn't want to be rude, he also wanted to know when he would be getting his balloon. "Hey, mister, is it okay if I have my balloon now?" The man turned his head towards Max and smiled. His elongated fingers curled around the brass pole sticking out of the horse's head, and he smirked before placing his hand on top of one of the polka dots aligning his suit. In an instant, he pulled the yellow polka dot out of place and blew into it, inflating the rubber into a full-size balloon. "There, kid. You got a 2-for-1 deal. I did a magic trick and made you a balloon. Now, if you behave and have tons of fun, you can get even more prizes." Max's eyes shifted towards the man, and his eyes fluttered in surprise. More presents and gifts. His mom never got him anything except for on Christmas and on his birthday. Like what, sir?" Max asked the man politely. "Oh, I don't know. How about ice cream, Max? You like ice cream?" All Max could manage to do was nod his head, yes. This place was only getting better and better for him. First he got a balloon and carnival rides, and now he was getting ice cream. What more could he ask for? "Really? Ice cream? Yes, sir. Thank you for this." Max knew his mum wouldn't be proud of him for listening to strangers. It was one of the things she told him never to do, after all. Still, this was a nice stranger. Max didn't think he was a bad guy trying to hurt him. Perhaps, if Max was older, he would understand that looks can be incredibly deceiving. But the pull of the carnival and the promise of sweets made him forget about his mother's warning.
And so he followed the man hand in hand, deeper into the carnival. "Excuse me, mister. Is it okay if I ask you a question?"
"Sure, Max. Anything at all," the man said, with a toothy grin on his face.
"How is this place so huge and colorful?" Max asked. Although he was just a small boy, he was still curious as to how something so impossible could be real. It was hard for him to wrap his head around the perfection before him, and he needed an answer. Not out of suspicion, but out of confusion.
You see, Max, this place is always so bright and happy because it's fueled by the happiness and joy of the world. The joy acts like a battery here, and soon you can help this world be even brighter and more perfect. I can tell you're a good child, Max. I know for a fact that the rest of the children would be excited to have your joy help fuel theirs."
Max stopped for a moment. Other children? He hadn't seen any other kids since he stepped into the carnival. No, he hadn't seen anyone but the man. "What do you mean by other children, sir?" Max inquired.
"Oh, the children in the ball pit, of course. All the ball pits in the world, in fact. This place is solely responsible for, well, making them fun, you could say."
Max nodded his head and proceeded with the man towards a tall building. He could see things poking out of the roof of the building and heading upwards. They looked to be tubes of some sort, with strange things in them. Colors appeared to be flowing through the tubes. Max couldn't tell whether they were liquid or gas, but he didn't mind. As long as he would get his ice cream, he would be pleased. As the man led Max into the building, the first thing Max noticed was the entire room they had entered was completely empty. No furniture, no paintings, no television. Well, maybe it hadn't been empty. Upon second inspection, Max saw what appeared to be exactly what he was hoping for. An ice cream machine was in the corner of the room. It was a soft serve machine. The man motioned for Max to approach the machine and gave him a plastic cup and a spoon to hold the delicious frozen treat in. Max was in front of the machine and stared at the dials and buttons of it. He reached towards it and then stopped. Something washed over him that prevented him from pouring the ice cream into his cup. Something deep within him told him to drop the cup and run far, far away. It was because at that moment he felt an overbearing sense of dread. The entire time he'd been in the joyful world, he'd felt safe and happy. But something about the man and the ice cream and that moment was different from the rest of the world. He didn't know how to describe it, other than a change in atmosphere. It felt as if, in the world and happiness and joy he was currently in, there was malicious intent within the man and the delicious sweet before him. Max turned back and saw the man behind him. His toothy grin was now replaced with a slightly annoyed look as he told Max to fill the cup.
"Come on, Max. I thought you liked ice cream. That's why we're here, right? To enjoy ourselves and have fun."
Max wouldn't budge. There was no way he was going to eat the ice cream. His arm started to quiver, and he withdrew from the machine. The man's expression changed again. This time, however, it was one of frustration. He placed one hand on Max's shoulder and used the other to grab his arm. He squeezed tightly, and his voice was different. The previously cheerful tone he once held was replaced with anger. His teeth were clenched. His veins were starting to become more noticeable throughout his head.
"Listen here, Max. Listen when I'm speaking to you. Do you want the rest of the kids in the ball pit to have a bad time just because you wouldn't eat ice cream? I'm trying to help you enjoy yourself, and as a result, you'll help the kids up there have the time of their lives.
but no, you'd rather be a loser. Do you want to be known for being a disappointment, Max? Do you want to be known as a loser? Tears began to roll down Max's face as the man squeezed harder on his arm. A red imprint began to form on his forearm as tears continued to roll down the young boy's face. He tried to yank himself away from the man, but with each pull, his grip only tightened. After using his small size to wiggle free from the man's grasp, he ran towards the doors he entered the building from. He pulled on them, only to find the doors locked. Max looked back at the man. He stood there, laughing at Max as he screamed and pleaded. His efforts were futile, though, and the man began making his way towards him. Max scanned the room through his tear-drenched eyes and saw it. In the opposite corner of the room was a door. Getting to his feet, he made a mad dash past the man and toward the door. The man made no attempt to stop him as he burst through the door and into the room. And upon entering it, the young boy let out a scream that echoed throughout the whole carnival. Max saw their bodies dangling in the air loosely. Children, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, hung by wires and tubes strapped to various parts of their body. Their bodies were colorless. Grey, leathery skin covered them, and their malnourishment reached the point where their ribs protruded and pushed their skin near breaking point. The life was drained out of their eyes, and yet their chests sunk in and out. They were alive, although they would be better off dead. Max could feel his heart smashing against his ribs, and for a second he felt as if it were going to burst through them. Turning around, he saw the man at the door. His toothy grin was back again, but this time it was for different reasons. Max stepped backward and into the entanglement of kids who swung from the ceiling. The man followed after him, and they both made their way through the grey children, the man hot on his trail. Max could hear the man only 10 feet or so behind him. He was stronger and faster than Max, moving through the bodies with ease. Max knew he had to do something, and fast. Thoughts raced through his mind, but in his panic, he somehow found a moment of clarity to think. The children's feet were only a foot above the floor, and with Max's height, he could drop down and view the surrounding area. He got down on his stomach and saw the man's feet moving towards his direction. He silently crawled in the opposite direction and did a loop around the man before standing back to his feet. He made his way towards the door he'd entered the room from. He knew that if only he could exit and make his way towards the escalators, that he would be safe. And so, he waded through the bodies and towards the door. He ran through it and was soon in the ice cream room. The door that was locked was made of glass, and although he hadn't had the time to break through it before, perhaps the man's wild goose hunt would buy him time. Max began to kick the glass of the door harder and harder as the glass cracked inch by inch. He knew the man had heard him because the sound of footsteps was now coming in his direction. He kicked and kicked, and soon the glass was almost shattered. The sound of footsteps was at the door across the room now, and with one last attempt, Max kicked through the glass and climbed through the small opening. He started running away from the building, only looking back once, and he was about 50 yards away. He saw the man bend and contort his body to fit himself through the child-sized hole in the door. Even from a long distance away, Max could hear the cracking of bones and the twisting of joints. They almost seemed to echo through the world he was in. The man was chasing after him again now, his long legs traveling faster and farther than little Max's legs were capable of carrying him. Max looked up at the sky. The once purplish clouds had now turned grey. The whole landscape was having its colour sucked out of it and replaced with grey. The same grey as the children he had seen. Carnival rides and decorations crumbled into dust as the man yelled from behind at Max.
This is what this world turns into when a child's joy isn't put to good use. Is this really what you want, Max? Do you want this world to burn?
Max didn't look back. He just kept running. To think that all the ball pits in the world were fueled by this place. It was spread out just enough to take children away, but not so widespread that it caused the closure of restaurant play areas and other places with the pits. The Ferris wheel fell off its hinges and crashed down onto the ground below it. The carousel horses were charred black, as if they had been burned, and the rides ceased movement. The air was filthy and filled with smog, and the flower beds and gardens died, leaving behind withering vegetation and chipped wooden fences rather than the painted ones Max had seen upon entering. But Max held on to hope, because in the distance he could see the escalator, and he heard the kids in the sky playing in the pit. The man was gaining on Max, and with every step, Max grew more and more tired. What started out as a 50-yard head start was now only a 20-foot distance, but Max was determined to avoid the fate that the other kids had met. He only had 10 more yards until he was upon the escalator. He was so close to the railing that he could extend his arm and touch it. He felt the hot breath of the man in the suit behind him, and with that Max lunged onto the escalator. He felt the man's slanky fingers wrap around his ankle and pull. Max looked back and saw the man. His entire appearance had changed. His suit was stained and tattered, and the previously bright colors were now dull. His hair was neat before, but was now a greasy mess of white. His skin was deteriorating and rotting, and he smelled of death and disease. He was showing Max what the world would look like without the joy and creativity of children. How it fell apart and plunged into darkness and decay. Max was more determined than ever to get back to his world. He reared up his other foot and stomped down on the man's head, crushing it between his shoe and the hard metal escalator step. The man screamed out in pain and looked up at Max, his face full of hunger and malice.
You can't escape, Max. I'll have your spirit and your energy, and you'll help fuel this world just like all the rest of the kids.
Max reared up his foot and kicked the man directly in the eye, sending him tumbling down the steps and into the world below. In a hurry, Max raced up the steps and towards the heavens. He only looked down when he was near the top of the escalator, only to see the man at the very bottom. The world was back to its usual colourful look, and the man waved at Max from below. Although he wasn't sure, Max knew that the man had the same toothy grin he'd always had. Looking back up at the sky, he ascended past the clouds and felt the texture of the plastic orbs. He heard the sound of kids playing in the pits, and he made his way upwards to the top. Max felt the edge of the ball pit and climbed out, absolutely exhausted. He watched all the kids swarming in the pit like a bunch of animals, ignorant of what lies below. And as he watched the kids play in the pit, he did notice one thing in particular. The pit seemed different than it had before. He didn't know what it was. Something about the color of the balls seemed more vibrant since he'd last seen them.
So I don't know if I would describe it as a liminal space, but you get the idea, don't you? It's that this is some communal area shared by humans for a specific activity, which once the store or the mall, whatever, the factory is closed,
it suddenly takes on, well, no life at all, I guess, isn't it? Yeah, so it's these liminal spaces, these after hours, more stories, that kind of thing. They really do fascinate me, and it's long been a favourite subject, as you can probably tell down the years from the channel. Anyway, yeah, so I do remember being 18 years old on a holiday. It was a big group of us, touring theatre company kind of thing. We were on holiday in Denmark, and I don't know. We just went a bit nuts, I think. Didn't do any harm, cause any damage, but we did. We were a bit too big for the ball pit, and we all jumped in there, and fortunately all the little kids escaped unscathed. But yes, anyway, not one of my finer hours, but I was young enough, definitely foolish enough anyway. So, my last experience of a ball pit. Oof, too long ago to even think about. Anyway, I am definitely waffling now. Hope you enjoyed those. I'll be back again very, very soon. Got some incredible stories lined up. A series about a pizza delivery person who ends up in all kinds of weird situations. I think you're going to really enjoy that one. That's going to be at least 2, maybe 3 hours long. That's coming soon. I'm going to be finishing that story I started last weekend as well. So, yeah, lots of good things coming up. So I'll see you again very, very soon. Till then, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams. Bye-bye. See you later.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.